Hello, this is James from Mode Lighting, and in this video we're going to go over understanding system modes. So system modes are a logic object. They allow you to change how buttons and inputs function, allowing you to perform different functions depending on their state. So in simple terms, it's a way of doing logic. So let's start with a simple example. I've created 3 scenes right now, 1, 2 and 3, all with a channel at different levels, and what I actually want to do is that these occur all from the same button in this example. Now at the moment, obviously what would happen would be that all 3 of these would try to occur and would be very odd, but we need to give it a way of understanding which one should be pressed. So let's add a system object to try and deal with that. So I'm going to go down here to the input section and select system mode. I'm going to add one, and it comes in with a default of 2 states that we can do things against these particular states. But let's have a look at in a little more detail. Let's go into the spanner option here. Okay, so I'm going to select its area, and I'm going to put it into the same area that we're working at currently, and I'm just going to add a few extra states here. So if I hit the add button here, what I want to do is add a couple of states that we can work against, matching my scenes in this case, but they could be anything. It's just dependent on what you're trying to do. And I'm going to hit the OK button. So the next step is we can now look here that the system object is above and below here. It's in both sections. It's one of the few things that does do this. It can be in the inputs and the output section. So first things I want to do is I want to set the state of this system object when this event occurs. So this is where we do up here in this line. So in this case I want to set 1, set 2 and set off. So this logic object now, whenever these buttons are pressed and these certain scenes are recalled, the object will change state. And now we need to make a sort of truth table of sorts. So let's have a look down here. So in this case, I want my on scene to occur only if the last version of the state was off. So in this case, I'm going to make that true. I want to make my option 2 occur only if 1 was true. And the last one is I want to set off only if number 2 was true. So this gives us a small truth table. This could be in different orders depending on what we needed for the button. But in this example, that should start triggering things. Now, one thing to remember at the moment is by default, this initial state will be true. So let's go and have a look at how that looks like in the monitor page for our object here. So we can see our system object is here and is currently in the off state, and I have my single button here that I have activated. So let's see if my logic is now doing something. So if I hit the button, now 1 is true and 1 has triggered. Again, now 2 is now true in the system mode and scene 2 has occurred, and 3, and we have that. So this button is now doing that logic correctly. And this is a very simple example, but we can build on this to make more interesting things occur, as you can have many objects and many things required for certain things to be triggered, and they're not limited to buttons. So here we have an example of a partition system, and this is written with system modes doing logic for controlling which rooms exist. So there are 3 actual rooms, room A, B and C, but obviously there are other combinations that can be done depending on what state certain switches are in. So example, A, B can exist, B, C, or an open area where everything is in one big area. So yes, this one is built with the logic in there to make this work. And if we look down here, we've got 2 system modes which are tracking or creating the logic for when these button presses can occur. So in this case, these button presses can only occur as long as the contact here is open, and this is where all these requireds are here. And we have another version of that as well here for the other contact for the other side of the room, and they're open as well. So yes, these would only occur if both the switches are open. And if we change and go to another example for example room A, and we look here, this one, because it's only one of the single rooms on one side, it requires that one of the partition switches is actually closed before these will trigger. So yeah, if we look in here in the control page, we can see with both of these open and we actually start pressing buttons, the open area scenes are triggering. But if I suddenly change one of these to a close, I believe we'll start seeing other room combinations will come into view. And again, this is just basically building on that same idea with the system mode, just that you're having multiples of them to make a different set of logic. There is one other possible use for system modes that can come in handy at some points, and that is its ability to allow you to trigger other scenes from a scene. So let's have a look at this example here. At the moment we have one button and it is triggering a certain scene at a level, and I can add in another scene and a different circuit that I want this same thing to trigger, but for some reason I don't want them all in the same scene. I can use a system mode to remotely trigger this. So let's add a system mode in here, and in this case I'm going to use this as just a trigger, not as a required. So I'm going to do trigger on, and I'm probably not going to use the off in this case. I'm just going to set that for a null option and do OK. This is because basically on power up and start up, this initial state is used for initial triggers, so we don't want that in this case. We just want to trigger something at a later point, and I could have multiple triggers in here if I wished. So if I then hit OK here, and then what I want to do is in the system mode here, I want to set it to trigger on when this button occurs, and in this case we want to go for, okay, on a trigger on, I want to recall this next scene. So our main scene here will actually trigger our sub scene here. So let's have a quick look at that in the control page to just see how that works. So if I now hit this, both of these two scenes are occurring. So this just gives you another option if need be, and maybe it's helpful to trigger another area but keep the feedback of the button being only dealing with the original area, etc. There's many possibilities. So last point on understanding the system modes is understanding what some of these other options are other than just this required, where both of these must now be true to actually get this to work. Another example would be if I change this here, I have this any command, which is basically the little tick in a round object. Now the difference here would be, in this case, this scene can occur only if these two are true, whereas in this case, if either of these are true, we will get this scene to trigger. So it gives you another logic option there. Other options we have are the not required. So in this case, this system mode, this will only trigger as long as this open is not true. So this gives you the option of doing the opposite if required. It's sometimes useful for certain circumstances. Usually you'll be using this square tick or the any, depending on your main logic, but this just gives you another option. And the same is true for as long as not any is set, we can actually say that either of these two must not be true for this to trigger. So this just gives us extra options that we may require for our logic. We can build up complicated truth tables if required. Thank you for watching this video, and please subscribe to the channel.